I was involved in the trade union movement way back in 1957, and at that time there were widespread unemployment, and it was a completely different situation from now. There were workers chasing for jobs. Wages were low, fringe benefits were minimal. So all these contributed to wide-scale dissatisfaction.
After the attainment of self-government in 1959, Singapore continued to be plagued by industrial strife. Leftist unionists under the Barisan Sosialis fought for control of the labour movement against unions supported by the ruling People's Action Party. In 1963, a massive security operation arrested more than 100 pro-communist trade union and student leaders. This helped to curb industrial unrest. Then came Malaysia.
Let's get together, sing a happy song. Malaysia forever, 10 million strong.
Singapore had assumed that she could only survive and prosper in union with Malaya. But relations with Malaysia soured, and she was forced to withdraw from the Federation in 1965. The sudden separation drove Singapore to seek her own destiny. In 1967, only 2 years into independence, Singapore's struggle for economic survival was dealt another blow when the British announced plans for an accelerated withdrawal of their forces east of Suez. The pullout would have severe implications. The British were then one of the country's largest employers, and their military presence accounted for 15% of the gross national product. The British pullout in 1971 meant the loss of 40,000 jobs. It would affect the livelihood of thousands who were indirectly dependent on the British military presence for their employment and income. It was in such an economic context that the government embarked on a rapid industrialization and job creation program. For industrialization to succeed, it was felt that two factors were essential, namely low wages and a disciplined workforce. Toward this end, two important pieces of labor legislation were enacted on 15th August 1968, the Industrial Relations Amendment Act and the Employment Act. Introducing the two labour bills in Parliament, Mr. Rajaratnam, then Labour Minister, stressed that the days of militant unionism were over.
The time has now come for us, employers, workers, and the people in general, to develop a new outlook. The old slogans, the old cries, the old attitudes of 20 years ago have become irrelevant. In the crucial years ahead, the major objective to which all other issues should be subordinated is this. It is not redistribution of wealth, but the creation of wealth that should be our major and relentless concern.
The new labour legislation sought to reduce wage costs and ensure industrial peace. It was part of the government's overall economic strategy to attract foreign investments and accelerate our industrialization program. The law covered only employees and excluded those in management positions. The Employment Act streamlined working conditions. It curtailed the right of unions to strike, gave employers the sole right to hire and fire, and also increased working hours. Workers also had their overtime, leave and retirement benefits reduced. The second piece of legislation, the Industrial Relations Amendment Act, reinforced management prerogatives. It specified that such issues as promotion, transfer, recruitment, retrenchment, dismissal, reinstatement and allocation of duties were no longer negotiable.
I think it was a tough decision for trade unionists at that time. right? Because to agree with it, then it may create the wrong impression amongst the workers that we are being subjugated by the government and being pushed by the government to accept something which is considered unpleasant. But then it is crucial at that stage for Singapore survival, right? Because we have the withdrawal of British armed forces, which means large-scale unemployment. We were briefed by the government at the time that there's a need to it, and explained to us in detail why it's necessary to introduce these amendments. And if we can get the union support, then I think the chances of Singapore's survival, right, economically is far better. Armed with this explanation and reasoning, we go down to the ground and explain to the workers that the constraints are necessary for our survival and for the long-term interests of Singapore.
The new industrial relations climate meant that management authority was restored and industrial peace secured. By 1969, a year after the passing of the two laws, Singapore enjoyed its first strike-free year. Since then, Singapore has maintained a largely strike-free record. A new generation of workers has grown up, largely unfamiliar with the unrestrained militant unionism of the past. Over the years, a new climate of tripartism has evolved, whereby employers, employees and the government work together to achieve orderly changes. In the area of wage increases, for example, the time-consuming and confrontational method of collective bargaining has given way to orderly wage adjustments under the National Wages Council. Since it was passed in 1968, the Employment Act has been amended twice. In 1972, the restrictions on overtime and bonus payments were relaxed in response to a tightening job market. More recently, in 1984, the Act was again amended to make it more relevant to the needs of the Singapore economy. The amended Act gives employers the flexibility to schedule shift work and to grant more leave benefits. The 1968 labour laws helped to establish a firm framework for industrial peace and stability. With a subsequent increase in foreign investments and job creation, Singapore experienced an unprecedented level of economic growth. Today, Singapore's stable and vibrant economic climate is due in no small measure to the foundation laid by the labour laws in the 1960s.